Agenda has been circulated. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Do we have any?
From Miles Langston, Chair.
Miles Langston, any others? If not, we'll go on to item 2, disclosures of personal prejudicial interest. Anyone? And then the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of March. Someone propose a correct record?
I moved it.
Be moved, seconded.
Yes.
Happy to, yeah.
Everyone happy with the minutes?
Yeah.
Which brings us on to the main item on the agenda for this afternoon's meeting, which is the report, the draft report to Cabinet arising from our discussions on supporting education recovery. And can I thank Helen for drafting the report? And I think on balance, in general, it certainly captures the discussions we've had as a committee, and we've got to thank the officers and for their input over the months, which has made this possible and given us the facts for us to arrive at the conclusions. Helen, do you want to take us through the draft report, and then perhaps the committee can make some comments after you've taken us through the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So obviously this is a draft report, and it will require the committee's full consent really for it to be taken to Cabinet on the 17th of June. So in essence, this report crystallises the work of the Policy Development Committee over the last municipal year, during a very extraordinary year, as we know. So it makes 3 main recommendations in terms of the work we expect to be delivered across the whole council. So we would seek really that all schools are supported and also monitored to maintain and improve the blended learning approaches that they've developed quite successfully during the last year. Secondly, to develop a whole school approach to emotional health and well-being. And you will note that in the policy framework at the start of this draft report, it notes that a framework has been developed by Welsh Government, which became available just after our meeting in March. It was published on the 15th of March. So that provides a good framework for all our schools across Swansea to embed a whole school approach to the development of emotional and mental well-being. But also we need to focus obviously on staff in schools, not just the pupils as well, because they have to be in a good place to provide for their children. And thirdly, then, the recommendation in the draft report talks about the systematic dissemination of good practice around the new ways of working that we've developed in education, particularly around how to deliver good quality teaching and learning in a different way. But also that we conduct, opportunities really for professional learning across schools so that we can support this emotional health and well-being agenda, and that indeed we accelerated it. There's a lot of good work that's been conducted already, even before the pandemic, but we need to build on that. So as I said, this draft report crystallises the work of the last year. And in section 2 of the report, you will see really the types of evidence that was heard and captured by this committee during the course of the last few months. And then when we come to section 3, there's a little bit more detail really as to what we would expect those recommendations to deliver for children, young people and to the schools across Swansea. So we are advocating as a committee, or the committee I hope will advocate, a whole school approach to developing that focus on emotional health and well-being, as this is probably the key emerging issue and the top priority that we need to get right in terms of our recovery in education. The report is entitled Supporting Recovery, and indeed we have to reset many of the ways we work. So the backing of the committee and the cabinet really will give us power to our elbow to make sure that this happens across all our schools. So obviously all the work we do in education and has been conducted on an evidence-based principle. So we don't just want to advocate any old thing. We want to make sure that we are using tried and tested methods and indeed backed by some academic research and good sound evidence base to make sure that we're supporting schools with the right tactics and the right methods. So 3.2 then mentions a whole school approach in developing further support really for digital competence and capacity. So the committee did consider the issues in terms of the access to devices during the time of pandemic. So we will continue with that work and build on the work in terms of our infrastructure for schools in terms of digital capacity. And we will hopefully try and add more professional learning opportunities for our school workforce in terms of digital learning. 3.3 then is about the systematic dissemination of good practice. So that will require officers really to coordinate and facilitate networks and events really to support the systematic dissemination and create repositories to contain a lot of resources that can be shared with schools. We do this already, but this will help sharpen the focus of where we need to really focus our energies as we come out of the pandemic. And finally then, section 3, there's an element there that obviously the curriculum for Wales is going to be implemented a year in September, but this is a fantastic opportunity really to bring some of those core purposes from the curriculum for Wales this committee has heard about in previous years, and it's an opportunity because this curriculum is very much underpinned by well-being, that we will make sure that we are re-injecting confidence and motivation in our learners. So in essence, those are the four recommendations with a bit more detail from the front of the draft report. So that's it really in essence, and if anybody's got any queries or questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Helen, and thank you for drafting this, because I think it does crystallise a lot of what we've discussed. Just one question: when you're talking a Swansea-wide policy, Swansea-wide policy on assessing emotional well-being, for instance, and a whole council approach, are we talking a set of practices, or are we talking a formal written policy there?
I think we need a common approach that can be offered to schools in terms of procedures, and that offer is there. We are engaging with a commercial company to support that. So we will be introducing that element of diagnosis, if you will, in terms of baselining the emotional needs of our children. So I think we do have an integrated wellbeing policy already, but I think it needs to be strengthened, and I think measuring really where children are at post-COVID and how they need to be assessed for their current wellbeing needs after they've been through a period of disruption is really, really important. So we will be conducting common, consistent procedures, and I'm guessing they will end up being reflected in policy.
Right. What I'm thinking of is, and I know this is touching on scrutiny, but I think it would be good for the committee to have an update, say in about 6-9 months' time, as to what's happened as a result of these recommendations, to set his own mind at rest really about what impact this work has had.
I think that's really important, Chair, because what we're facing at the moment, coming out of a crisis really, is that there are so many offers of support in different guises, from the third sector, voluntary sector. We've got different offers of support for mental health and well-being, but we're trying to be as coherent as we can. So developing a clear strategy in Swansea, maybe I'm shying away from the word policy for a reason, but a very coherent strategy is what we need, so that all the different fragments can be brought together. And we do have an understanding of what the Swansea approach is, rather than having disparate types of support available for our schools and for children in Swansea. We want to bring as much coherence and cohesion as possible in a strategy.
And I know I'm aware, and others are aware, you know, there's all sorts of organisations offering support. And I think, you know, we need to be absolutely clear that they are meeting our needs, and that the quality control is there, and that they're benefiting the children and young people across Swansea. There's a few hands up. I'll call you in first, Des. That's okay.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Helen. I'm just wondering if you're aware of other authorities in Wales working along similar lines, because I'm sure that whilst we appreciate what's happened in what is happening and what has happened in Swansea, and how some systems are better than others, and we've got lots to learn from various schools, there may be things we could learn from other authorities, because, you know, we don't get it right all the time. So are you aware of similar tracks that other authorities are going along?
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I'm imagining that this will be a top high-level priority post-COVID for nearly all authorities in Wales. And on that basis, you know, we are keen to learn from others as a learning organisation. I think we should be opening our doors and windows, and in the same way as we would want to learn from other authorities, we would invite other authorities to come and speak to us and to learn from us as well. So I'm imagining this will be a national priority, and indeed the framework that I referenced in the draft report will give status to the need really for this to become a priority. It's been there before COVID in terms of the work of the Senedd looking at this and making recommendations to Welsh Government. But COVID has obviously brought it into sharp focus. And as we come out, really, the impact on children and young people and their mental health and well-being will be on everybody's lips. And I'm hoping that we can share and we can reciprocate, really, across Wales.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, God, where's my hand?
You're done. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for my hand. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think I think the report really focuses on what we've heard over the last year, and on the side of digital as well, how we put a lot of things, or suggested a lot of things could be put in place over the last few years, and that really helped when COVID happened. Really, we were, if you like, I think ahead of the curve because of it. And I think that is there's great news, and I think the recommendations here really focus on what we heard and what's been going on as well, and what we could look to do in the future. And I think it's a very sound report, and well done, Helen, for bringing those strands together.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? I think, Helen, the halo is glowing on you this afternoon. Everyone's happy and content. So are we happy to endorse the report, endorse the recommendations, and move this forward to the Cabinet for their consideration and the next step?
Yes, I move, Chair.
It's been moved, seconded. Everyone agreed?
Yep.
Okay. And can I also make the request then that we have an update, say within about 9 months, 6-9 months time, whenever committee feel it's appropriate, to see what differences has made, and indeed, you know, are there any refinements or developments that need to be made in due course once this approach has been developed? Because I know, you know, the schools are going to be. It's going to be a new experience for the schools. They've never had to do this before. And it's prioritizing the emotional well-being, the social skills, as well as getting on with ensuring that each learner fulfills his or her potential. You know, that's a huge agenda. And we need to be able to support our schools in moving this forward. The only other, there is no item of forward look because I think that's going to come onto the June agenda. But one thing that has been discussed before the meeting was, and I think it's coming out of scrutiny, education scrutiny, who looked at the notion of community learning mentors who would be acting as mentors, especially for more vulnerable learners, and there's work that has been done on this, and the suggestion is that that could be one of the things that the PDC could take forward. It's a policy development angle more than a scrutiny angle, because it's moving things forward rather than reviewing things. So if members are happy for that to come up to be considered as part of the formal part of the forward look, I certainly think that there's a lot of merit in that approach, and it's something that we should consider.
Yeah, good.
Members happy with that?
Yes.
Helen, are you happy to take that forward? Sorry, I'll call you, Lyndon, in because you're the chair of the education scrutiny.
If I could say, Chair, the idea came up from Councillor Mike Dirk, who raised it at scrutiny and talked about learning champions. And I know he's, as you know, he's very keen on this angle, and we talked about it. And then I had a meeting with Mike and Helen as Director of Education, and we talked it through, and we thought that it was probably more thing for the PDC to talk about, because you're talking about developing policy rather than scrutiny, where we are looking at things that the council have done. I spoke to Mike then after that as well, and he is, as you saw in the email that I sent, Chair, was really happy for that to happen. But I think it's an exciting piece of work, and maybe Mike could be invited to attend meetings if he possibly could, you know, work permitting, because it was, as I say, his idea, and it really was something that we thought was excellent.
Helen, you want to come in?
Yeah, just to echo Councillor Jones's comments, really, in terms of an appropriate vehicle to take policy forward, and what is a very, sound idea. I think the Policy Development Committee should consider this as their forward look, as you said, Councillor Smith.
Members happy to I think at this time it's just a matter of noting it and then bringing it up in the June meeting.
Yeah, June the 16th meeting will be the sort of work plan discussion, Chairman. So obviously this is one to be borne in mind.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other items members want to bring up now? I mean, we've produced a report, we've looked at a whole council policy, and we've brought in a bit of joined up thinking with scrutiny. So I think, we've in the 18 minutes we've been here, I think we've achieved quite a bit, to be honest with you. Sorry, Mike, Mike, you've got your hand up. You're on mute.
Yeah, it's just a small thing, really. You indicated to Helen that you'd like a report back 6 to 8 months' time, giving us an overview of how the recovery has gone. And Helen did mention earlier that the digital inclusion was a big part of the recovery. As you will know, Chair, over the last year we have been supplying devices to children at home. I just wondered if those devices would be continued to be used in a digital way, i.e. perhaps homework set on them, and just give us an ongoing report when she comes back to us to help us assess how that money that we spent on all those devices, and was it worth it, and is it continually to be worth it? That's basically all I want to ask. Only a small thing, but I don't know if Helen could include that next time.
Certainly, I
Thank you,
think
sir.
that is important because it shows what impact that aspect of the approach has had. So, Helen, if you're happy to bring that back.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, unless there's any other business this afternoon, can I thank you all for your attendance and your contributions? And I think, again, the Education PDC has produced a report to Cabinet, and I will take great pleasure in moving that to Cabinet when on behalf of the PDC.
Good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.